On today's episode of Casting Actors Cast, we're going to look back and find out the reasons why we now have 75,000 downloads of the podcast. The podios, the podcast videos. Come on! It's a celebration and you're invited. All you got to do is just listen. It's Casting Actors Cast.
It's time for another episode of Casting Actors Cast. Here he is, your host, Jeffrey Dreisbach.
Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of Casting Actors Cast. How are you? I'm Jeffrey Dreisbach. I'm a casting director with McCorkle Casting in New York. I hope you're having a good day. Listen, 75,000 downloads of the podcast later, here we are. All kinds of changes have happened during the course of our podcasts. For example, something small like, COVID. Oh my goodness, we have been through so much together, and if this is your first time joining Casting Actors Cast, I couldn't be more delighted. We are an entire group of talent, like-minded individuals who on a weekly basis show up, listen into these 20-minute or so podcasts all about the business of show. Acting tips, acting advice, career guidance, all that stuff from a casting director. That would be me. My name is Jeffrey Dreisbach. I started as an actor when I first got to New York, and I acted for 20 years. I made my living as an actor. But then, you know what? The last Broadway show I did was A Few Good Men on Broadway. It was the last performance I did, and I just thought to myself, you know what? There's got to be something else out there. And that's when Pat McCorkle said, well, why don't you just come on in and help me out in the office? That was at McCorkle Casting, and after 12 and a half years, I have not looked back. It's been an exciting time, and I am so grateful. And then it was about 3.5 years ago, I guess, that I started doing these podcasts. Really, the purpose of these podcasts was to give back what wasn't given to me when I was an actor, but also I love to teach. And all of the questions that I would get in my teaching seminars and my workshops, I thought, well, it would be kind of a cool idea to put these questions in the form of a podcast and then do a simulcast of a video. And so that's what I've been doing. We call them podios, podcast videos. And so I want you to simply feel welcomed and to jump on board. If you haven't done so already, I suggest you go to the website, castingactorscast, all one word.com. And that is a really I think it's a pretty cool website where you can find all kinds of information out, not only about the show, but you can also get and download all of the show notes for all of the podcasts called Jeff's Jots. Like I said, it's over 220 podcasts now. And so you can have your pick, but the show notes are available to you. All you need to do is fill out the form that says dive into the talent pool. That's going to open up some freebies in addition to the Jeff's Jots show notes. But you're going to find there is a downloadable PDF book called Conversation Pieces Out of the Studio, the voiceover workshop for professional actors. If you're interested in doing voiceover work, I highly suggest you download this free 100-page book about doing voiceover work. The second I'm kind of excited about is that I put 21 of the top episodes of the podcast together in one document. It's a PDF and it's called Show Notes. And so you'll get the top episodes, show notes, so that you can listen to the show notes as well as have those show notes at your disposal. 21 of those show notes have been put together in a single PDF. You can have that. And then also finally, there's a video. It's absolutely free for filling out the form. And I've said this every podcast, I think, and that is that I don't spam you. I don't send out trash email or anything like that. Occasionally, I will send out an announcement about an upcoming episode, but that's fairly rare. I'm very, very busy. I don't have a lot of time to do the kind of promotional stuff that a lot of podcasters like to be able to do. I don't have that kind of time. So you might get an occasional email from me recommending that you tune in on a podcast. That's about it. But anyway, it'll open up another freebie, which is a video, a 20-minute video called Casting Secrets, What They Don't Tell You. But guess what? I'm going to tell you in this 20-minute video. It's exclusive to those people who sign up by giving me your name and your email address. Okay. Finally, I just wanted to give a shout out, and what a grateful person I am to have Actors Connection in my life. If you haven't checked out Actors Connection, please do so. We have a mutual agreement that I promote them on the podcast, and they occasionally do a posting of an upcoming show of mine. So it's sort of, an advertising shake hands kind of agreement. And I'm delighted, though, because Actors Connection is a really cool place. You can do online classes now with professionals who are currently working in the industry. So you should take advantage of that. Check out actorsconnection.com/New York. And also, I'd love for you to check out some of the classes I'll be teaching. You'll find it at actorsconnection.com/New York. Okay, finally, I just want to let you know that you can get all of the episodes not only on the website, but if you go to castingactorscast.podbean.com, you're going to find all of the episodes in a comprehensive order. They're in order of when I release the podcasts. So you can get all 220 podcasts at your disposal, but that's Podbean, which is hosting the podcast. The address again, castingactorscast.podbean.com. All right. Woo. That's a lot of stuff, and thank you for hanging in there for that. I know it's going to be a little reflective, and I'm kind of tooting my own horn a little bit. I hope you'll forgive me just a little bit. But like I said, the entire idea of this podcast came about because I really wanted a forum to be able to answer actors' questions. I had so many questions when I first started acting, and I didn't have a lot of resources available. Of course, this is dating me very much because it was before internet. So I didn't have a lot of really great go-to resources. And now that we have this amazing technology now, I felt that it was time to sort of share some of the information based on the questions that I've received from actors in these classes and seminars. So let's just talk about the very first episode that I decided to drop when podcasting had already been fairly successful and a lot of people were really excited about podcasts. So I decided that the very first episode was going to be called, What Does a Casting Director Do? Now, listen, if you tune into that episode, you're going to hear a very inexperienced podcaster. I didn't have a lot of production. I didn't have a lot of music and stuff, but I did have a little bit of background in audio. So I thought, well, I got to try and make the sound as professional as I possibly can. So I decided that I was going to add some of these I actually got some crowd noises from classes I secretly recorded. This is going back 3 years ago, so I think statute of limitations on that are hopefully expired. But I actually secretly recorded some of the classes and seminars so I could get some laugh track. I could get some people laughing or responding. So I decided to include some of those comments and statements from those classes in the podcast. So it's very weird, whatever. But I'd love for you to tune into that. What does a casting director do? And it was really, just kind of me flying by the seat of my pants, just kind of trying to figure it out. And I was so excited that I got my first, 25 listens on that podcast. I thought, oh, dude, I am so there. I thought that was the coolest thing since sliced bread. So I really had a great time doing that first podcast. But then subsequent podcasts, I felt like I was getting a little bit better and better. I was able to put my thoughts together a little more succinctly. I was able to make a little more sense. It wasn't just stream of consciousness. I started doing outlines of the podcast. I started creating show notes and putting all of those things together in kind of what I thought was a fairly comprehensive way. Once again, all of this was based on questions that I had received during the classes that I had been teaching. And that continues to this day, by the way. So let's talk a little bit about some of those episodes that I think were, and still are, really generating some a high degree, I have to say, of interest from those actors out there listening and getting into Casting Actors Cast. So I thought I would share with you some of the top episodes. So these are the top 12 episodes since we began this journey together of Casting Actors Cast. The very first one that comes to mind are the video submission episodes. And the very first one that I received garnered something like 785 people tuning in to that particular episode. So I was kind of like, wow, this is cool. I'm kind of getting into something. And as you might recall, that was me playing the podcast. Sorry, that was me playing the audition over the air in the podcast. So you couldn't see the actor unless you were tuning into the YouTube channel, which of course you can always still do because I simulcast these. But it was kind of, I thought this is a real risky thing to do, just taking an actor's video and putting the audio on the air and then critiquing. But you know what? It got so much attention. It kind of blew my mind. So that was one of the first episodes to get over 785 downloads. It's pretty amazing. Now, here are some other popular titles that I would suggest you might want to check out as we celebrate our 75,000 downloads. One that I was surprised got a lot of attention was called Personal Pet Peeves. And those were little things that bothered me in the auditions from actors. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the personal pet peeves here today, but I would invite you to check out the personal pet peeves. And these were things that actors did that just kind of got me. Kind of made me go, yeah, I wish that didn't happen. So you might want to listen to that episode called Personal Pet Peeves, and that's pretty much early on. The next one I really wanted to share with you that I thought was surprisingly successful was acting career warnings, 5 tips. And these were things to make actors really aware of what was taking place. And a lot of it had to do with the process of auditioning for the actor, but it also had to do with logistics of submitting yourself and career warnings, those things that would really should rather send up kind of a red flag, make you kind of stop and think about, okay, am I doing the right things? So those career warnings, 5 tips, became really popular. The next popular one that I was happy to see got kind of the more success over time was called Actor Hacks. And these are the little things that actors can do, whether it's in an audition or whether it's in a submission, or things that they can do after the audition is over, or things that happen after they've gotten the booking. Those kind of little hacks, little tips that really could help a lot of actors. That got hundreds and hundreds of downloads. And so that was kind of fun to see how successful that one became over time. The next one is called a simple title, Callback? Now what? And it really was, I think, very practical, very useful advice about what happens when you got the callback. Of course, the biggest mistake being is that actors continue to work on the audition after they've gotten their notification that they have a callback. And that always seems to end up being an overworked audition. And the callback happens, and the actor spent so much time trying to make it better that they've really done some damage to themselves, because what was attractive in that initial audition sometimes gets lost when the callback happens. So knowing what you did in that first audition, making a notation for yourself so that in the likelihood that you will get a callback, you know exactly what you did, and you will be very careful about not over-rehearsing for the callback. So that's a really fun episode to listen to, and I give a bunch of tips in that episode as well. The other thing that I was struggling with over the past 200 episodes was really making sure that I had titles of the podcast that would pique your interest, but I didn't want to sell myself out. You know what I mean? I just didn't want to do sensationalized titles. After all, I think this is a more of an education platform than it is an entertainment platform, although, I'd like to think I'm kind of entertaining, but, that'll be for you to decide. I really think that I really had to be careful that I didn't want to give the wrong impression with some of the titles, but I knew how important titles were in terms of attracting new actors to come. So this one, I kind of was hoping would get a good reaction, and it did. And the title of that episode is called Be a Working Actor. It was real simple real practical, hands-on tips about what you needed to do to get yourself in good working order for an acting career. And that one, again, one of the top 5 popular podcasts of all of the podcasts that I've put together. Now, the next one, and speaking of titles, I call it Balancing Act. And this was about, seemed to be 1 year into COVID. And it was really important that I share with the acting audience, with the actors, that you needed to strike a balance between your work and your personal life. And we all had struggles. We were struggling and continue to struggle, actually, in some of these areas because of the political unrest, because of what's going on in the world and what's going on with COVID. It really is important that we do some self-care. And so Balancing Act was all about doing that. And then that was followed by another popular podcast called No Rep, Action Step. So that really was a shout out to those actors who didn't have representation, or if they did have representation, it really wasn't adequate representation. So No Rep, Action Step were those things that you can do to help find an agent. So if you're in that position now, this podcast still holds up. Just because it's a little older, it was done a little while ago, doesn't mean it has wasted information. In fact, I think the information that's provided on that particular podcast is as relevant today as it was then. It's called No Rep, Action Step. Now, the next one got over 500 downloads very, very quickly. And I guess, again, sounds a little bit like it's a sensational title, and I want to kind of stay away from just trying to be that guy. But this one was called Submissions That Get Auditions, and really quickly garnered over 500 downloads of that podcast. So I think it's a really good episode because it really did talk about the way to submit yourself and those things that I see happening not only in the submissions that you're sending, but also even in your self-tape. And that leads me to the very next episode that garnered just as many downloads. It's called Self-Tape Acting Mistakes. So we talked about the technical side in one of those episodes, and now Self-Tape Acting Mistakes was all about those acting things that you can do. And primarily, when actors are trying to be outside of the space that they are currently occupying when they're doing a self-tape, that's a mistake. The best way that you can choose how to do your acting is to be in the environment that you are in and placing that other character just one palm away from your outstretched arm. That's where that other character is. And so the acting mistakes that I see are actors still being too big, too large, not really playing the moment in the space that they are in. So that was one big tip from Self-Tape Acting Mistake. Followed by the next one, Audition Do's and Don'ts. The title, I think, is Auditions Don't Do This. Okay, so back to being a little more sensational. Auditions don't do this. Talked about the many things that I've seen actors do in their auditions that are just blatantly not helpful to the actor. So you might want to check out that episode. All right, finally, there is how to make a slate great. I was really surprised that the feedback, the notes, the letters I got from people from all over the country, in fact, people are writing me all over the world, which is kind of like freaky, but how to make a slate great. And I really talked about how the disinterested actor who uses the slate as simply a cataloging device and doesn't really take advantage of what a good slate can be is making a mistake. And so how to make a slate great, I talk about those tips like if you're asked to do a full body shot, I give a really great tip on how to fix that. I also talk about doing an end card at the end of your video, your self-submit video, and how so few actors do that and why that's really a good tip, really useful information there. That's called How to Make a Slate Great. And once again, I just want to let you know that you can get a hold of all of these episodes. By the way, I put together a comprehensive list of all 20, I think it's about like 22 to something podcast show notes, and it's just one PDF of about 21 pages, but you can have that absolutely free of charge. Go to castingactorscast.com, fill in that form that says dive into the talent pool. You can click on that and download those PDFs. Also, on the website, you can listen to your heart's content to any of the episodes that you might be interested in listening to. So it's not an issue for you to go back and sort of check some of these out. And then finally, I want to give you the email address again of the podcast provider. It's called Podbean, and it's castingactorscast.podbean.com, and you'll be able to open up all of the episodes, all 225 episodes of this podcast. So as we celebrate our over 75,000 downloads of the podcast, and with over 225 episodes of Casting Actors Cast already in the archives, I just have to say this. I am so touched by the feedback and the suggestions that actors have made to me over the past 3 years. You know, I'd like to think that some of the episodes I have been helpful and perhaps in some small way maybe contributed to making you the best talent you can be. That's the whole purpose of doing this. So my suggestion and my wish is please keep listening, keep sharing, and help keep Casting Actors Cast on the air for the next 75,000 downloads. Thanks. It's been a real pleasure, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time on Casting Actors Cast. Thanks.
Thank you for joining Casting Actors Cast. Please don't forget to review, like, and share Casting Actors Cast wherever you get your podcast videos. Thanks. I'm Megan Grace Martinez.